What's up, what's up? I'm Dr. Omatma, host of Egg Meet Sperm, where we're busting fertility myths, sharing tangible tips for your fertility journey, and bringing you the most knowledgeable guests to support your journey to parenthood. This podcast is for both women and men because getting fertile as fuck is for both partners, don't you think? Remember, just listening to this podcast won't get you pregnant, but following the tips we share just may. Let's get you fertile AF so that you can co-create the family you dream of. And if your partner's not listening to this, make sure to share this episode with your partner. Hello and welcome to Egg Meet Sperm. I'm so excited because we are joined by Luna Hart today. She is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner that's passionate about helping sensitive individuals that feel isolated and alone in their health challenges to finally get the support they need to thrive and find resiliency in this modern day. With over 20 years of experience in the healing arts, she uses functional lab testing and cycle tracking to uncover clues to unresolved health complaints so that you can return to the heart of your health and happiness. I love that. Hi, welcome, Luna. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Omatma. So good to be here.
Absolutely. And I am really excited to talk about cycle charting and cycle tracking because this is one of my super close to my heart. And I'm curious, you have been doing this work for so many years. What do you feel like the potential of cycle charting is?
Oh, well, I think one of the biggest things would be just its ability to help us listen to our bodies. Mm-hmm. I mean, by all means, it supports women in conception, and it's a very effective form of contraception. But I think that body literacy, that ability to, have that daily check-in with yourself, and also just course correct. I feel like my cycle, by charting my cycle, I have learned when things are getting off, and really been able to consider what in my lifestyle and my diet, my stress load, my sleep is affecting my cycle. So I've been able to really optimize my health by watching my cycle and just being curious what's going on. So
amazing. So it almost sounds like we have this superpower within ourselves that is giving us feedback all the time. It's just learning how to listen to that feedback.
Absolutely.
I love that. So for those of us that are listening that maybe are brand new to this, what is Fertility Awareness Method?
Yeah, so fertility awareness is different than the actual method. Fertility awareness can be just that body literacy, that check-in that you do with yourself. It can be any mindfulness technique, but fertility awareness specifically is checking in with the body to notice, if you're fertile. And the method is actually when you're doing the day in, day out checking of some certain biomarkers to really pinpoint that fertile window and know really clearly, are you fertile or are you not? So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how can we use fertility awareness to pinpoint when is our fertile window and how to support conception? Yeah,
so by the method that I do, and I just want to say there's many methods out there, there's a whole umbrella of methods, but I do the Symptothermal method of fertility awareness, and that's really tracking. The sympto is the cervical fluid, and the thermal is the basal body temperature, and then we also have an optional marker, the cervix positioning. And so by charting definitely throughout the day and watching those biomarkers, there is an opening and a closing to that fertile wave. And then just knowing that every other part of that cycle, once you confirm ovulation, you're actually not fertile. And I think that's a huge thing. Most of us did grow up thinking we were fertile on every day of our cycle. Huge misconception. And that there's actually, this approximate 6-day window based on the amount of cervical fluid you are producing and how long the egg will actually survive, which is 12 to 24 hours. So there's just this little window. And when you actually know when that is, you get to, really set forth on whatever your fertility goals are.
Yeah. Yeah. And statistically, there's only a 25% chance of even conceiving in any given cycle. And that doesn't mean you're going to get pregnant 1 out of 4 times. It literally just means 25% of every cycle you maybe have the chance of getting pregnant. So it's truly amazing that we even have pregnancies and reproduction happening because, like you said, when whatever we have learned about our bodies is so different from the actual reality of how fertile are you and when can that fertility actually happen? When can conception actually happen? So it's so important. And I believe that the Symptothermal method is one of the best tools that we have in our back pocket to hopefully learn as young as we can possibly learn them, to really to have that body literacy and to have that relationship with our body of oh, this is when I'm ovulating. This is what's happening right now.
Yes, I totally agree. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So what exactly, can you say more about that fertile window? So what does it look like on a symptothermal method to say, hey, I'm fertile right now?
Yeah. So, we'll have our menstruation and then, it all depends. Many women do have days after menstruation where they'll enter a dry pattern, or we call it the baseline in the method that I do, where this is, an infertile pattern. And then, and I'm very much talking about cervical fluid. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden there's this point of change, and the cervical fluid that you're noticing will actually shift. And that's the point where this window opens and where you acknowledge I've entered my fertile window here. And then you'll just chart your cervical fluid during that. And we really use the basal body temperature to confirm ovulation, the cervical fluid too. But what happens after ovulation, when the egg is released, that follicle will turn into the corpus luteum, and a little miniature endocrine gland will start to produce the progesterone. And that progesterone measures our will increase our body temperature. So that's where we'll see the increase of the temperature in the luteal phase and confirm ovulation through that. Also, simultaneously with the temperature rise, we also have this drying up pattern of the cervical fluid. So after ovulation, after estrogen dips after ovulation, because that cervical fluid very much is estrogen. Mm-hmm. So when we're charting that cervical fluid, we are charting the estrogen in our cycle. And when that dries up, it also is confirming, ovulation did occur. So once again, the basal body temperature is really charting the progesterone in your cycle, and that cervical fluid is charting the estrogen in your cycle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amazing. And so why is cervical fluid such an important biomarker?
Yeah, it's an amazing stuff. And I've even before just answering that question, I feel like this is one of the ones that I'm I wish I knew more growing up about my cervical fluid. I am definitely one of those people who when I had the cervical fluid, I actually thought there was something wrong with me because no one actually told me what that was. I kind of always, I don't know if I'm a hypochondriac or what, but I was just kind of curious, what is this, And now that I know it's this, really special fertile fluid, it is a marker of health. I just get to approach it in such a different way. And I actually didn't learn this until age 36. So once again, this is a piece that I just, this should be taught at a very young age to all women. But why it's so important is because it does open the window. So, it's the whole picture, but just to, know that your fertile window is opening. That's super helpful for people who want to, are in the process of conception, to know that you're entering that phase. Also, that cervical fluid is basically sperm snacks. So sperms can literally live on cervical fluid. They say possibly up to 5 days if it is that high quality peak fluid, or what we call like the big F fluid, the super fertile fluid. So it's like sperm snacks. So, the sperm can actually live for a really long time in that fertile fluid. Without cervical fluid, a sperm only lives 1 to 4 hours, I've been told. So I think that's really interesting. Like you need this cervical fluid. And then also it's important for the motility of the sperm. It allows the sperm to move and to approach the egg and to survive. So it's absolutely needed for natural conception. And I will just say there's a range of, how much cervical fluid a person will experience in one cycle. And sometimes, you only get that like really fertile fluid, that peak fluid, maybe up to like 1 to 2 days. And those are kind of the high prime days for conception, is these days that you're seeing that super fertile fluid.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I'm sure a lot of our listeners are thinking this right now. What if they don't have cervical fluid? Does that mean that they can't conceive?
Well, I feel like if cervical fluid is low, there's all these things that you can do to understand why and optimize that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it is actually needed, but it is something that you can improve, just, through diet, through lifestyle, through stress, through, just eating more fats, staying more hydrated. There's definitely some supplements, which, can definitely be something that they could talk to you about. But yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do on a mental, emotional, physical level to improve your cervical fluid. And that's another huge reason why charting your cycle and considering, the degree of how much cervical fluid you have in a cycle is a huge biomarker for your ability to get pregnant. So it is something to check in with. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something to really pay attention to and focus on. And if it's not happening, really get the support to optimize your cervical fluid.
Yeah,
absolutely. So let's take the opposite scenario. So what if they have cervical fluid all the time, right? Like the women that are, I see this particularly in PCOS women, but I'm curious what you have seen in terms of the women that you've worked with. Yeah. If they have cervical fluid multiple times in their cycle or all the time, which some women describe that they have, what could that mean?
Yeah, so very same. It's definitely a sense of an imbalance. If you're having cervical fluid more than that, and this is, we all have, I'll just say, kind of scan back a little bit and say, we all have a wetness. Mm-hmm. We all have a natural baseline pattern. So it's really getting in tune with that. But if we are seeing cervical fluid, which is, anywhere from crumbly to creamy, that would be kind of the non-peak fluid, to something that's slippery, egg white, slick, lubricative, and just more of that. And if you're having it more than, say, like a 6-day window in your fertile window phase, then it could be an imbalance. So once again, doing some testing on hormones would be really important. Checking into liver health is really huge with that. I have found that sometimes when people have stagnicity in their liver, that can really create this kind of extreme fertile fluid all the time. You really want to rule out any underlying infections with your primary care practitioner, and And then I've actually had really good results just working on diet with some clients who just felt like they were wet all the time. Like it was too much. It wasn't enjoyable and it was too extreme for them. And for this one client that I'm thinking of, she actually took out dairy and it was huge for her. She was like, the cervical fluid is balanced now. She's like, I just have it during that typical time. And so it can just be something simple, but you do want to even just kind of rule up bigger imbalances.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. All right. So then let's talk about the second piece of this, which is the symptothermal method, which is the basal body temperatures. So what are basal body temperatures telling us, and how do they help support this conception?
Yeah. So for me, like, actually, I'll just say that when I first learned Fertility Awareness Method, I started with the Billings Method. Mm-hmm. And that's a cervical fluid only method. And it's quite amazing. They have tons of studies and you can actually just go off cervical fluid. And that's just incredible. But for me at the time, because I had some imbalances personally, it was really hard to really see what was going on. So I love adding in the basal body temperature. I feel like it's just more comprehensive. It takes the guessing out of it. And so what we're measuring with basal body temperature is resting metabolism. And we're really looking and confirming ovulation with that basal body temperature. So when you do see that rise, in Fahrenheit, it would be 0.2 of a degree. When we see that rise, we know, okay, ovulation has happened, especially when those temps stayed high. I really like basal body temperature for people who are trying to conceive because, if you start having high temps past 16 days, you pretty much have a likelihood of a pregnancy. And I love that. It's like even before you're peeing on a stick, you're just like, I'm pregnant, so it can just be such a great marker for people who want to conceive. They get really excited to watch that. Mm-hmm. And it can just clue us into any other possible imbalances. Really, if we don't have that really great rise, it looks kind of weak or it like dips and we spot mid-cycle. All those things might clue us into how our progesterone is doing. Is there a luteal phase deficiency? And just, kind of really tracking that part of our cycle. How is that doing overall?
Mm-hmm. And I love what you said about the pregnancy piece, because we actually suggest that our clients continue doing BBT charting or basal body temperature charting through the first trimester. We've seen drops in temperature correlate actually like 2 or 3 days before the actual drop in progesterone. So if you can catch it early enough, you can actually like supplement progesterone during the first trimester and potentially like support the health of that pregnancy and not have it go into a loss.
That is amazing. That's so good to hear.
Yeah, it's I feel like it's amazing because it's like it's a free tool. We train our clients to see this, right? And then they can be like, wait, my temperature is dropping, and not to like freak out about every single temperature drop, but you can really see like a degree change. Mm-hmm. And if it's dropped a whole degree in Fahrenheit, we do all the tracking. So in Fahrenheit, if it drops a whole degree, then we're like, okay, now is the time for us to get super concerned. Let's test your progesterone and simultaneously supplement. And like, it's incredible. I love it.
So that's next level care. That's beautiful. Yeah.
So the biggest struggle that people have with basal body temperature tracking is just the fact that they have to do it, right? Like the idea of like, oh my God, every morning I have to like remember to do this. I'm curious if you have any tips or ways to like fit this into a lifestyle that just becomes a natural part of us rather than like, oh, yet another thing that I have to do.
Sure. And I also come from someone who struggled. So, and I had no reason to struggle. Like, people do have actual reasons. Like, so I thought it was a little cumbersome to remember to do. So I initially, just to be honest, I started with a temp drop. And that's a wearable thermometer that you wear on your arm. And now I actually do both. So I can tell you how like just basal body temperature and the temp drop compare. But I really recommend if people try with the basal body temperature, just a regular one from the store, and it doesn't work for you, then I would check in with temp drop and just go that route. I will say the temp drop takes a second to get wise. I almost like tell my clients just to give it a cycle. It's a little wonky, but as you use it, it gets even more wise to your body, which is great. And you don't need a fancy thermometer. I just want to say also, you can just go to the store, get a $20 basal body temperature, something that rounds to at least 1 decimal or 2 decimals. So things that are helpful are to have it, like if you have an alarm, have your thermometer right on top of your alarm. Can be one thing. To have a thermometer that keeps a memory is also helpful. So you can actually take your temperature the minute you wake up and then put it back down. And then I always record in the evening of that night before the next morning. So having a memory, and even the easy, simple thermometers will have memory. So look for memory. Sometimes getting your partner on board, which maybe that's not always, but, just some acknowledgement that they're doing this together, like, just kind of getting your partner to help remind you, hey, honey, put the thermometer in your mouth. It's like anything I find, if I'm in the habit, it gets really like I'm just doing it. The minute I get out of the habit, I won't be doing it. So just keep trying. And I do feel like you will just fit it into your routine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's, I like the temp drop too. We use that a lot. We actually give it to all of our VIP clients because why not take away the one hurdle that most people have to measuring temperatures, right?
Yeah.
So we'll usually just support people to do that. But absolutely, if you're not working with us, you can use a regular thermometer. It doesn't have to cost a ton of money. There are also incredible basal body temperature tracking devices. There's something called Premom that is also really great. People have good reviews about that one. So we'll link to some things in the show notes for resources, but really getting into the rhythm of doing this will really support this body literacy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually want to go back to cervical fluid for 1 second because I just realized as we were talking about temps that people equally are hesitant about looking at cervical fluid. Mm-hmm. So can you just talk a little bit about how that can also be made easier?
Yeah, thank you for circling back to that because it is really important and kind of demystifying the cervical fluid checks. So it's, once again, just like the basal body temperature where you just get in a rhythm and you're just doing it every time you go to the bathroom, to be honest. And so, but even before that, and I kind of learned this back when I was studying the Billings or learning the Billings for my own self, is that just get into the habit of sensing how you feel at the vulva. And that can just be throughout your day, just acknowledging, taking a moment, just asking yourself really quickly, how do I feel down there? So that is what they call checking in with your sensation. And then there's when you go to the bathroom and there's the toilet paper check. And that's where you're just going to wipe and you just acknowledge, how does it feel to wipe? Do you notice a slick? Do you notice slippery, or does it feel dry? And so you just notice that sensation. And then when you look at the toilet paper, just notice what you notice there. especially if you felt that slippery sensation. Usually you'll just look on the toilet paper and you'll see this like sheen of stuff, or it could be creamy, or it could be crumbly. It could be all sorts. And if you do see something there, you want to put it between your fingers and just check it out. And just get in tune with what that is. And then, if of course you don't see anything in either of those places, the next I recommend is just checking right at the vulva. So it's an external check. You're not going up into the vaginal canal. You're actually just checking at the vulva area. Do you notice anything there? Once again, just checking between your fingers and getting as much descriptor words as possible, especially if you're working with someone who's looking at your charts, writing down exactly the words and the feelings and the texture and the color. And then I also have to say, this is my best time to check is, and not all educators share this one. I'll just share it because it's honestly really poignant for me, is after my morning bowel movements. I'll look down and I'll just kind of notice my cervical fluid if it's that time of the month. So those are some pointers. And I would say just, get used to just checking. And next thing you know, it's like brushing your teeth. You just do it because this is what you do. So,
yeah. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, because I do think that there's a little bit of like ick factor. There's a little bit of like the nervousness of, oh my God, you're going to tell me to stick my fingers up my vagina. So thank you for demystifying that, because I think it really is just like observation, and it doesn't have to take time or take a lot of energy to do.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. So you said there was a third check that is potentially optional, and that's the cervical position. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So cervix position, and for anybody, I'm gathering most people know what the cervix is, but basically the cervix is the bottom part of your uterus that opens and dilates for pregnancy. And you can actually palpate it. And, everybody's different though. I have seen some people who experience difficulty actually touching their cervix. So just to know that this is an optional marker. You do not need this marker. I find it most helpful when things are confusing. Say a person's coming off birth control pills, they have PCOS, irregular periods, or perimenopause. This can be a good one to add in just so you have that more comprehensive checking. And so basically it's finding where you want to check your cervix, because if you check it at different places and positions, it can feel different. So some people like to check in the shower. The benefit is you're clean, your hands are clean. You also have water. So it's just easy and lubricative to actually insert and check your cervix at that point. I personally check when I go to the bathroom. Once again, I'll just wash my hands and I'll check in that more kind of squatted position. And for people who have trouble pinpointing their cervix, I do recommend squatting to find it. Or you could be laying on your bed, and just know that this can be a sensitive area for some women. So if you're going in to try a cervix check, always, get that permission from your body. Don't be forceful. And you might want some lubrication on your fingers to actually do this kind of a check, especially if you're not in the shower. And, basically what you're doing is you're just noticing what the cervix feels like. So when the cervix is infertile, it'll feel more like the point of your nose. And when it's more fertile, it's going to feel like your lips, kind of a texture. And basically, during ovulation, the cervix will rise, it will soften. Some people say it straightens. I've never experienced that. But it will soften. It's also wet, and it's all the influence of the estrogen. So that is causing the softening of the cervix. And then right after ovulation, when that progesterone comes online, the cervix will almost immediately kind of start to drop and harden a little bit. So that's really like for someone, especially who is using this for conception, you would want to be just using it around that time. Really would be the highlight is, in your fertile window, and then right after your suspected ovulation, just to confirm it, you would just be like, oh yeah, it changed. And so that's kind of just a little bit of the optional marker to check too.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much. So I already see like this can be tremendously helpful for someone that's maybe just starting to learn what it is that their body is saying. How can a fertility awareness educator support someone gaining body literacy?
Yeah. Well, I have to say I needed to hire someone. And I would say, sometimes it's really clear cut. Sometimes you can just go off a book, and just learn online. But for me, I just had some imbalances and had some confusion, and I wanted someone to talk to. So it is really helpful. We talk cervical fluid and basal body temperature and cervix position all day long. So we're very comfortable with just having that conversation with you. And so if you do have any questions about what you're seeing and just want to get some clarity on your charts, that's when you would want to reach out to a fertility awareness educator.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I know that you have an incredible gift for our listeners. Can you share a little bit about what the gift is?
Yeah. So if you're curious, I have an intro to body literacy and fertility awareness method. And it's it's going to get into a little more of the history of the method. It's also going to get into what it's used for, which is either contraception, conception, or this overall body literacy. It's going to really talk about, all the different methods too. And it also talks about the statistics around how effective the method is. And so if you're interested, that is a free intro webinar that you can watch and just get more information on the method.
Awesome. We'll look forward to seeing you soon. And thank you so much for being with us, Luna, today. And for all of our listeners, we're going to link to to your training. We're going to link to your Instagram and all of the amazing resources that you have shared with us today.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Was that an amazing episode or what? Make sure to check our show notes so that you can link up with our guests. And if you're not a part of our secret Fertile AF community, you can join for free via the link in our show notes. Last but not least, have you showed us some love lately? It would mean the world to us if you could share and review our podcast. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time on Egg Meets Sperm. Peace.